And even football on the pitch is becoming all about data, and it's all about numbers, and it's all about how many passes this player done, how many ones that player done. So on the pitch is becoming like that. Off the pitch is lagging way behind. You mentioned Ronaldo and these guys, the big hitters. They've set up. They're fine, but the low level players, who, as I said, still got lots of followers and lots of influence, could be utilised more, I feel.
Welcome to Footprints in the Market. So we are halfway through our webinar series. So what better halftime challenge than to bring on an ex-pro footballer who is also the commercial director of Game Changing Media. So I'm going to give you full disclosure at the very beginning, because Game Changing Media is actually the sister company of Digital Footprints. So we thought, what better way to introduce it to the world of iGaming than to have Jamie come on Footprints in the Market to give you a little bit of a better idea as to how Game Changing Media can help the iGaming space when it comes to the marketing landscape. So thank you so much for coming on, Jamie. I know they have a busy schedule.
Do indeed, yes. You crack the whip. But I'm very excited to be on. Thank you for the opportunity. I feel privileged because there's been some great guests before me, so it's I feel very privileged to be on.
You made the cut. What can we say?
Mm-hmm.
So if you could give us a little bit of a background on your route to the iGaming industry, and also just how Game Changing Media serves the industry as well.
Yeah, I can give you a full background. We'll be here all day, but I'll give you as brief as possible. So I was a professional footballer for 15 years, so a lot of experience in the sporting industry and the professional world. Played in England, I played in Scotland. Played in the big leagues, played in the low leagues, so I have varied experience of playing across a number of different divisions, experienced the highs, experienced the lows, and it stood me in good stead in my business world since I retired. So I retired from football and I worked in financial services for 10 years, gained a lot of business contacts in that. And then I left a very secure role about when I turned 40, had my midlife crisis, and left a very secure role with a good salary and good pension, and decided to take the plunge because I felt it wasn't what I wanted to do. So after that, I went into a very few different commercial roles, again building up my business contacts and my network of people that I know, which has led me into my wonderful opportunity, which I took last year, to join Game Changing Media. First of all, as commercial manager, then progressing on to commercial director, which is an amazing opportunity to work. And I'm not just saying this because you're interviewing me here, but to work with yourself and with Steve. Obviously very experienced in the iGaming industry. I'm fairly new, as I've just alluded to. But I can already see what a great industry it is to be involved in. And the work and the experience you guys have got in the industry is only going to serve Game Changing Media well. And hopefully with your experience and my sporting experience, then we can make a big impact in the iGaming world.
You can't tell from the filter, but I've got tears in my eyes, Jamie.
Thank you.
Could you tell us a little bit about Game Changing Media as a whole and why it's important within the iGaming landscape, and how your sponsorship activation service and everything within that is important?
Yeah, so I suppose Game Changing Media, we've seen a niche in the market, specifically for sports marketing. Again, get back to my sporting days. The world of sponsorship hasn't really changed much since I retired, and that was, I'll not give the years, but it was a few years ago now when I retired, and not much has changed in the sponsorship landscape in terms of how sponsors are activated, how content is created, how the power of digital is used. It's still very traditional. So Game Changing Media was set up to, I suppose, bring it into the modern world with the way the world's gone and the digital evolution. and using the experience that we've got with yourselves and digital footprints and combining my sporting experience and game-changing media. It's a pretty powerful combination, I would say, that we can use all the experience we've got to create meaningful campaigns, to target audiences, to engage with fans, to engage with sponsorships and build great partnerships between clubs and sponsors.
I think that's the thing. I think you've got the ability, well, I suppose one of the unique abilities to look at it from the two different lenses. So being in the football world or the sporting world, for example, and then now coming into the market in an iGaming world. So one of the things is like sports clubs, and particularly in Scotland, football clubs, they always need money.
Mm-hmm.
And iGaming is one of the biggest investors in terms of sponsorships and the money that they put into that. How critical do you think that is to the world of, obviously we're not sports specific, but based on your experience in football, how critical do you think that is to the football world and making it a commercially viable product?
Yeah, well, I mean, iGaming, from the short space of time that I've been in it, it's a very booming industry, very lucrative. You know, I think does exceptionally well. So for sports and football, particularly Scottish football, and the opportunity is there to receive significant financial boosts by partnering with an iGaming or a kind of betting company as such, and the money that can come into the game by partnering with the iGaming companies, as I say, would be astronomical. And I'm not going to say this is a pun, but a kind of complete game changer for clubs, which can then be reinvested into youth development or infrastructure or capital for the clubs to improve their coaching, improve the players, improve the infrastructure, improve facilities. I see it as a massive opportunity for both parties, for iGaming companies as well, to partner with sports clubs because of the reach they've got, and vice versa. So I see it as a massive opportunity.
And what about the women's game? So obviously in Scotland it's a little bit different. So the SWPL have decided they don't want to attach themselves to any sort of like age restricted products or brand like iGaming, for example. They want to push clean brands. But within England, the rest of the UK, and obviously other emerging markets, the women's team still look really viable products for iGaming to get involved in. How do we level the playing field and bridge that gap between the women's game and the men's game? How can we as an agency help make that happen?
Yeah, so it's a great point, and it's a completely, I suppose, untapped market, I would suggest, the women's sports and women's football. I mean, it's booming right now, certainly in England and across Europe. And as I say, it's completely untapped. So from an iGaming perspective, there's a large audience there. There's a lot of women gamble. If you look at the percentages, a lot of women gamble. So, there's that market there. And I just think it's a great opportunity for iGaming companies and for us to get involved in women's sports and increase the visibility for women's sports. And I get the point about, Scottish clubs and their point of view. I totally understand it. But in a sense, I suppose it could be kind of double-edged sword, because obviously we're crying out for money up here. The women's game are crying out for money, and the money that could come in from iGaming companies, if that was reinvested in women's football and used, like, for example, education program for gambling, equality in men's and women's football. I mean, the men's football sponsored by William Hill. So what's to stop the women's game? So I get the point, but, I think we need to maybe look beyond that and look at it as an education piece for young players and young women to get involved and take the money and use it and reinvest it in the right ways.
I think just kind of linking back to your sporting experience as well within that, do you think there potentially needs to be like a mindset shift within the clubs as well in terms of like that investment? So, for example, one of the challenges from an agency perspective before we even had game-changing media was that when we were creating sponsorship deals, the women's sponsorship was just kind of thrown in as part of the package. And then as soon as we would go to negotiate commercials in any which way, they would just drop it like that straight away. So the first thing they would do is just say, fine, we'll lower the price, we'll just take the women's out.
Yeah.
So how do we move away from that and then just say, do you know what, this is actually a really important product. It's a different product. In some instances, it's a more engaged product. Do you think it's all about how it's activated, or do you think there's just a broader cultural and social problem that needs to be addressed?
Probably a bit of both. I definitely think there is a social, I don't know if problem's the right word, but attitude towards it. You're totally right with joint sponsorship deals. We've had numerous examples where the women's and the men's have been joined together. The women's not getting as much, and the men's game is getting a lot more. And it just seems, maybe as a kind of token gesture to throw the women's sponsorship in there, which is totally unfair. And what you might find is, say it was a large iGaming company or a betting company or such, if they invested in a large or a sports club as such, it could encourage other brands to get involved as well. And it could be the catalyst for other brands to get involved and put a lot of money into the women's game, which will increase, commercially, it will have a massive impact on the game, on the coaches, on the players, on the infrastructure, and obviously that increases the sponsorship awareness and opportunities for the clubs as well. So yeah, I mean, going back to the point that we've encountered as well, we've had some challenges with that with clubs, and it may be that it hasn't been activated properly as well at times. And I say that with the greatest respect to clubs and commercial departments, but go back to my point 15 minutes ago, not much has changed since I played. So the commercial teams and everything seems to be exactly the same as when I played. And times have changed in all our aspects of life since then. So it seems surprising to me that the football world and sports world, when a lot of it is to do with we need money, we need different income generators coming in that they can't see, or some of them struggle to see, and maybe take the blinkers off a wee bit, that the opportunity is there if they used a specialist sporting agency. Not that I'm touting this for work, I'm just saying that us as such, should be the catalyst for clubs to use because of our expertise, and not only the iGaming world, but in general marketing as well.
So one of the challenges that we've got when we're obviously pushing iGaming and gambling brands is there's like negative connotations attached to that, and I suppose any age restricted product. I think we've got the same issue with alcohol as well. You touched on education and training earlier. How do you think we can change that mindset and create more positive messages through our sponsorship activations and kind of get that responsible gambling message across?
Yeah, I mean, certainly over the years there has been a lot more messaging about the potential harm in gambling. I think we just need to be a bit more positive about it, a bit more positive about the messaging, educating the young people a bit more, maybe partnering with organisations who specialise in gambling problems and the iGaming industry, actually partnering with them so you're educating the young people early. Maybe an option, and that seen as being a bit innovative and forward thinking. At the moment, there just seems to be the same message that's going out, and people are seeing the same message, maybe not really understanding it or taking notice of it. So I think there needs to be a bit more powerful messaging, and as I say, maybe partnering up would be a great idea and educating the young people. I think that's the key.
I think one of the clubs that you'll certainly be familiar with within Scotland has a gambling front of shirt sponsor who've activated that really well. So Kindred have done a great job with their work with Rangers and getting those responsible gambling messages out and making sure that they're working with the players and they're educating everybody within the team. I'm sure you'll have probably seen that. And what do you think of their campaigns?
Yes, I have seen it. So Kindred, obviously, Unibet and 32 Red are the main sponsors of Rangers, and there has been education pieces that they've been doing with the players and the staff. I feel that maybe it could go further afield than that and maybe get involved with fans a bit more as well, and groups of fans, and and as I say, the younger folk, and educating them a bit more. about the potential pitfalls. But obviously, gambling is meant to be entertainment, and maybe go down that route that's an entertainment industry rather than looking at it from maybe a financial gain or anything like that. So, that should be the kind of messaging that's getting across, but Kindred are doing a great job of that, which is great to see. And it's the same with Celtic and other side, obviously, with Dafabet, who's their main sponsor. So, and if we can, other clubs could get involved in that as well. The other large clubs in Scotland have thousands of fans, thousands of followers. So if a betting partner was to get involved with these clubs, not only is it a great opportunity for the club and the partner to make quite a bit of money from it, but also to educate the fans at the same time about gambling, and ultimately that would be a win-win for everyone.
I think there's definitely other advantages as like a byproduct of that. So I know certainly with Kindred, what they do is they also work with and invest in the charity foundations that are attached to the clubs as well as part of their overall strategy. So like, they're investing money into the club not just from that commercial standpoint, but there is also those other added benefits that I think we probably can't ignore either, is like potential positives from having a sponsor that does have, budget that they can leverage to do those like great things.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think gambling companies, they need to be transparent now, which they are trying to be, because the public, they're not really that, they're not daft. So, if they're being a bit more transparency, a bit more open, look, this is the options that are ahead, educate people, these are the pros, these are the cons. And if you're doing all that and that positive messaging, I don't think the gambling companies can do any more. And I think that's the road we're going down. If we can keep continuing that positive messaging and focus on the positives and many benefits that gambling and iGaming can bring, and the education piece, I think if we can nail that on the head, then people would take a step back and go, yeah, they're trying to do the right thing, and then it's up to the individuals to make their own choices.
I think that's the thing. I think what I also wanted to kind of touch on is, again, you could probably look at it from both lenses, is we're now in a world of influencers and brand ambassadors. We've got like Ronaldo, who's like world breaking. He's now got like what 1 billion followers across all social media platforms.
Mm-hmm.
How has that evolved since like when you were a player? Could you ever have thought that you would have that level of influence and that platform that you can actually monetize your brand that's not a football brand, but as an individual, and kind of create passive incomes for that? How important do you think that is for players in a career where the lifespan is usually shorter than what it would be in the average career?
Yeah, that's a good question. Has it changed? Well, yeah, it's changed pretty dramatically. To give you an example, when I was at Norwich, which is in the mid-90s, I remember I was a boot boy in my YTS days, so for Chris Sutton and these guys, but they used to wear specific type of boots, and the boot manufacturer, whoever it may be, maybe Adidas or Puma or World Cups, I don't know if you know Adidas World Cups, I'm sure Steve does, great boots, but they would pay the players a lot of money for them to wear these boots. Now for the boot to stand out in a match, and for the logo to stand out, I had to put Tipex on the Adidas sign, I'm saying, or the Reebok sign or the Puma sign, so when the player's playing on the pitch and the TV cameras can see it, or the fans can see it, oh, Chris Sutton or whoever, oh, he's wearing Adidas World Cups. And that's how they would manage to get the brand across back in the 90s. So now we've got nearly 30 years later, Ronaldo with about 1 billion followers, and the power of social media, that we don't need to go to those lengths for young YTS boys to be Tipex and boots to get the brand across. It can be quite easily done through the power of social media, through the power of the player or whoever the influencer is. But sports stars in general, sports players in general, they've got all those, the public there kind of at their fingertips. And if they can be seen to be in a positive light, it can only be a positive message that's gone across to all their followers.
And I think that's like a potential benefit that's probably missed a little bit in terms of the iGaming investment from like that brand ambassador point of view, because once that player or once that personality has that number of followers, they're not going anywhere. So even after football or after whatever sport it is that they're prolific in, they still have that influence that then they can commercialise and use to sell for other things. It can still be betting brands. It can still be that. So again, do you think that there's that like positive element of, it's actually helping create careers. It's investing money into people and not just businesses, and helping footballers again that maybe don't, wouldn't have a roadmap after football.
Absolutely, and I'm the perfect example of that. Leaving school with no qualifications, straight into football, and having to retire at 29, 30 with nothing, and having to build myself up again. But nowadays, even at a low level in Scotland and local level, players have still got thousands of followers. Players that play for Aberdeen, Dundee United, Hearts, Hibs, thousands of fans, thousands of followers. So even at that level and that scale, there's a lot of interest in these guys. And that can be, as you say, it can be capitalised on, it can be utilised, social media, and companies can get involved with that and get their brand across using these players as such. There's play on Saturday, they play on a Wednesday, there's training videos, there's social media sponsors, there's everything that can be done for sponsors to get involved with these players. And what it does for the player is it gives them experience of being able to deal with the public, to be able to deal with social media, to be able to, build skills that they probably wouldn't be able to get access to if they were just playing on a Saturday like I used to do. So it's a great opportunity, and I think it is one that's missed at the moment, certainly in Scotland. And you mentioned Ronaldo and these guys, the big hitters, they're set up, they're fine. But your low level players, who, as I said, still got lots of followers and lots of influence, could be utilised more, I feel.
Do you think there's an education piece around that to players and how they can build their own profile, or how involved are clubs or like the PFA in terms of doing that? Is that something that they're kind of left to do themselves or with their agents, or do you think that there is room for like an agency to work with them to really build that for themselves?
It's a good point. Good question. Yes. So, from my experience, and I've still got obviously a lot of contacts in football and a lot of people I still speak to. In my experience, I don't think the clubs get involved too much in that. I think agents are the big one. I think the agents take a big role to play in that, but obviously they've got other roles to play in the player's career and life. So are they experts in the industry? Have they got the knowledge? Have they got the experience? Or are they just doing it because there's money involved in it? Potentially, I don't know. But there's definitely room for a specific agency type that can help players, from an influencing point of view and from a career point of view, and to be able to monetize what they're doing and think about it from the bigger picture. Because at the moment, and again, going back to the women's game, women's sports, same for players that play for Rangers, play for Celtic, and other clubs as well, but mainly them two have got thousands and thousands of followers in the women's game. And I've got an influence over thousands and thousands of young girls and young people. So again, that could be utilised positively.
100%. You talked about monetization there a little bit, and I think that's really important because what we talk about in the iGaming industry is predominantly everything was tracked. So everything was on what's the click-through rate on this, how many registrants, how many FTDs. And sponsorship marketing was traditionally a little bit more fluffy. So there wasn't as much data to back up the campaigns and to kind of tell if there is success or not. But we've now got all of these tools that we can use to track all of this stuff. So it's not all just based on clicks. It's not just kind of based on this stuff. It's based on brand mentions. It's based on, how many times your casino has been named within the last month prior to and post campaign. And also the sentiment behind that. How invaluable do you think that information is both to the gambling sponsor and to the club if they have it, because they're now being provided that from an agency? Because from our experience, from your chatting to these clubs, they don't have that data and they don't have that information, and they're not able to relay that back to their sponsors, which could cause problems down the line if they don't have that intermediary within.
Totally right, and hit the nail on the head. You know, a lot of, in fact, the majority of clubs I would suggest don't have the data analytics or the software to be able to track this stuff that, you know, the things that you just mentioned there. Specialist agencies such as us do. And the world we're in at the moment, and the world and the way it's evolving and the way things are going, and even football on the pitch is becoming all about data, and it's all about numbers, and it's all about, you know, how many passes this player done, how many runs that player done. So on the pitch is becoming like that, off
Yeah.
the pitch is lagging way behind. So if you've got a specialist agency who can provide sponsors and provide clubs with all that information, all that data, it should really be a no-brainer, because it's, again, using the term game changer, it will be a game changer for clubs to have that information there, which to allow them to make educated decisions based on what they see coming in and based on what the data's telling them, which is what they're doing on the pitch, making decisions based on what the data's telling them. We can provide that off the pitch, give them the data, and then they can make the decisions.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to close this off with a slight variation of a question that I've asked everybody that came on for Footprints in the Market. So obviously you're saying you're fairly new to the iGaming industry. If you were to give anybody who was emerging into this specific sector one piece of advice, like of any kind of learning curve, what would it be? What would you tell them?
Well, having watched all the episodes so far, and my limited experience in iGaming, but plenty of experience in sport and plenty of experience in business and commercial, I think what's coming across is a bit of patience. Seems to be a key word in the industry. It seems to be a booming industry, but you need to stand out. So having a bit of patience, making sure the infrastructure is correct before you dip your toe in the water seems to be the message it's getting across. But I think being brave as well. I think Adam mentioned that in his session with yourself.
Nice shout out to you, Adam from Sport Radar.
Yeah, I think it's being brave and having that bravery to make decisions and do things which maybe is a bit out of the norm, and that may be, like we touched on earlier with the women's sports and the women's game. That would be bravery from an iGaming company to get heavily involved in women's sports, and with all the benefits we mentioned earlier, you know, it might take some of that bravery, but it'll be pretty lucrative, I would suggest. Patience and bravery, which I've got in abundance, not. Got bravery, but I'm not got patience.
Yeah, I was going to say we really practice what we've reached there a wee bit, but a decent soundbite nonetheless. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for being on Footprints in the Market.
Thank you very much.
We do appreciate
Great. Thank you.